Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story. On a rainy evening, Emily, a cafe worker, found herself hurrying home through the wet streets, her umbrella barely offering protection against the storm. As she passed a narrow alley, a faint whimper caught her attention. Following the sound, she discovered a small shivering dog hiding under a rusty car. Moved by the dog's vulnerable state, Emily decided to take it in, naming the dog Lucky for the night. Despite her initial plans to reunite Lucky with its owner, Emily quickly became attached as she nurtured the dog back to health, capturing moments of their growing bond on social media. As days passed, Emily's connection with Lucky deepened, but so did her determination to find the dog's true family. Through a series of heartwarming encounters, Emily's act of kindness ultimately led to a reunion that changed the lives of both Lucky and his rightful owners, Sarah and her daughter. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest stories. The rain fell relentlessly that evening, drumming softly on the city streets as Emily hurried home after a long shift at the small cafe she worked at. The umbrella she carried barely kept her dry. The wind whipped at her coat and her shoes squished with every step through the puddles forming along the uneven sidewalks. The streets were quieter than usual, and a gray, heavy sky seemed to weigh down on everything around her. As she passed a narrow alley, a faint whimper caught her attention. Emily stopped mid-step, tilting her head to listen. It was almost imperceptible, but there it was again. A soft, pitiful sound, the kind that made the heart ache. Curious, she approached the alley cautiously. There, tucked under a rusty parked car, was a small dog, shivering violently in the cold and rain. Its fur was muddy and matted, and its eyes, big, round, and wide with fear, seemed to plead silently for help. Emily's heart clenched. She had always loved animals, yet she had never owned a pet herself, believing her life was too busy to care for one properly. But something about this tiny creature's vulnerability called to her in a way she couldn't ignore. Most people, she thought, would have walked by. Most people didn't stop for a small life struggling alone in the rain. But Emily was not most people. She knelt down carefully, trying not to scare the dog, and whispered softly, "Hey there. It's okay. I won't hurt you." The dog hesitated at first, shrinking further under the car, but Emily stayed, her voice calm and patient. Slowly, it inched toward her, sniffing her hand. The rain fell in sheets around them, soaking both of them. Yet in that small, suspended moment, the rest of the world seemed to disappear. Eventually, she scooped the dog into her arms, holding it close. Its little body was cold and trembling. "Don't worry, little one," she murmured. "I'll take care of you tonight." She tucked it carefully into her coat and hurried home. Ignoring the sloshing puddles and wet streets, at her apartment, Emily set up a small space for the dog, providing a warm towel and a bowl of water. She ran a gentle hand through its fur, noticing tangles and mud clumps that would take hours to untangle. She gave it a small portion of food, watching nervously as it ate cautiously as if it had forgotten what being fed felt like. She decided to call it Lucky for the night, although the name felt both ironic and fitting, considering the unfortunate situation that had brought them together. Over the next few days, Emily's life slowly revolved around Lucky. She made a routine of feeding it, cleaning it, and slowly helping it regain trust in humans. She took pictures and posted them online, hoping to find the dog's owner. Flyers were put up around the neighborhood, but no one came forward. The silence was heavy at first, a subtle ache in Emily's chest. But as she watched Lucky grow stronger and begin to trust her, a different feeling emerged, one of warmth and attachment. Lucky would follow her everywhere in her small apartment, curling up beside her while she worked or studying quietly on her laptop. Its playful antics brought a smile to her face, and she laughed more freely than she had in weeks. Yet deep down, Emily reminded herself that this dog was someone else's, and she could not keep it forever. She felt a strange tug of war in her heart. Part of her wanted to keep Lucky, but another part insisted she do the right thing and find its true home. One evening, as Emily sat on the couch brushing Lucky's fur, she noticed how its eyes followed her every movement, the tail wagging softly whenever she made eye contact. "You're learning to trust me," she whispered. "I promise I'll find your owner. I'll do right by you." That night she lay awake thinking about all the possibilities. Who could have lost this dog? Why was it alone? And why did fate seem to have dropped it into her life? The days passed slowly. Emily's friends noticed a subtle change in her demeanor. She seemed happier, lighter, even though she carried the same burdens of everyday life. "It's that dog, isn't it?" one friend asked teasingly. Emily laughed softly but didn't answer. How could she explain that a small, shivering creature could fill such a massive space in her heart? One afternoon, while taking Lucky for a walk through the neighborhood, Emily noticed something strange. A group of children were pointing at her, whispering and giggling. Curious, she approached and saw that one of the younger kids had a small toy dog identical to Lucky. They told her a story of how a dog had gone missing from a nearby home, and though they were unsure, Emily's heart raced. Could this be a clue? She asked them more questions, taking down details and cross-referencing with her social media posts. The search began to feel both urgent and terrifying. She worried for Lucky, worried for the owner, and worried about the life that had been disrupted. Evenings became a blend of suspense and care. Emily would often check the streets, hoping to see someone calling for their lost dog, listening for familiar barks. Every knock at the door, every call or message had her heart jumping, only to sink again when it wasn't the owner. Yet through it all, the bond with Lucky deepened. The dog began to follow her everywhere without hesitation, sitting by the door when she left for work and rushing to greet her when she returned. Then came the night of the thunderstorm. Lightning streaked across the sky and rain pounded heavily against her apartment windows. Lucky was unusually restless, pacing and whining softly. Emily held it close, whispering reassurances, stroking its fur, her own heart beating rapidly. She realized how much the dog had become a part of her life, and how fragile the connection could be if she didn't find the owner soon. That night, sleep was impossible. She stayed awake, planning the next steps, thinking about the moral weight of her responsibility, and reflecting on how a single act of noticing a small life could create such a whirlwind of emotions. As the days turned into a week, Emily began to notice the subtle transformations in Lucky's behavior. What had first been a trembling, cautious creature slowly blossomed into a playful, curious, and affectionate companion. Every morning, Lucky would jump excitedly whenever Emily opened the door to leave for work, and every evening he would wait by the window, eyes scanning the street for her return. It was in these small moments, his wagging tail, the soft nuzzle of his nose against her hand, that Emily felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't experienced in a long time. She realized that caring for another life wasn't just about feeding or sheltering. It was about connection, trust, and love in its purest, most innocent form. Emily documented every day of Lucky's recovery, posting photos and short updates online in the hope that the owner might see them. She used social media platforms carefully, making sure to include descriptions, approximate location, and times she had found him. Despite the effort, no one reached out. At first, Emily felt a pang of disappointment each day when the messages didn't come. But slowly, that feeling shifted to a quiet acceptance. Maybe the universe had placed Lucky in her life for a reason. Perhaps this was not just a temporary caretaking role, but the start of something more meaningful. One afternoon, Emily decided to take Lucky to a nearby park, a place filled with other dogs, children laughing, and the occasional elderly couple walking hand in hand. The sky was still overcast, and the remnants of the earlier rain had left the grass glistening. She noticed how cautious Lucky was at first, sniffing around nervously and staying close to her. Gradually, however, he began to interact with other dogs, playing chase with a golden retriever and cautiously approaching a small terrier. Emily's heart swelled with pride and happiness. Seeing him regain confidence and joy reminded her of the resilience that existed in all creatures, no matter how fragile they seemed at first. The park became a routine. Emily would go there almost every afternoon, letting Lucky stretch his legs and experience the world beyond their apartment. She met neighbors and dog owners who would smile at her and compliment Lucky's appearance and behavior. Some even asked questions about how she found him and where he came from. Emily would respond cautiously, careful not to get attached to the idea that someone might appear suddenly to claim him. Inside, though, she felt the gentle tension of hope and worry, the delicate balance between attachment and responsibility. During one of these visits, an elderly man approached her while she was sitting on a bench watching Lucky play. He wore a heavy coat, his hands clasped tightly around a cane, and his eyes were filled with curiosity. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice warm and slightly shaky. "That's a beautiful dog. Did you find him here?" Emily nodded and recounted the story of how she discovered Lucky in the alley, shivering in the rain. The man listened intently, nodding slowly. "You're very kind to take care of him," he said. Not many people would stop for something so small and vulnerable. Emily felt a surge of gratitude at his words, as though someone finally understood the weight of the responsibility she had taken on. That evening, she reflected on how kindness, even in small doses, created ripples in unexpected ways. Back at her apartment, Emily's nights were often filled with quiet moments of reflection. She would sit in her small kitchen, a cup of tea in hand, watching Lucky curl up on the rug beside her. Sometimes, she imagined what it would feel like to return him to his owner, what their joy and relief might look like, and how it would change the trajectory of all their lives. At other times, she found herself imagining a life with Lucky as her own, the two of them forming a bond that no one could break. These thoughts brought both warmth and sadness. She knew in her heart that her role was temporary, yet she could not deny the depth of connection that had already formed. Emily's care for Lucky was not without challenges. One morning, she noticed that he seemed reluctant to eat, his energy lower than usual. Panic gripped her heart. She spent hours checking for any signs of illness, washing him gently, and monitoring his behavior. Finally, she decided to take him to a nearby veterinarian. The vet examined Lucky thoroughly, listening to his heartbeat, checking his eyes, and running a few tests. After a tense hour, the vet smiled and reassured her that Lucky was healthy, merely exhausted from his initial ordeal and the stress of adjusting to a new environment. Relief washed over Emily in waves, and as they walked home together, Lucky's tail wagging again, she felt the gravity of her responsibility and the reward of seeing him safe and thriving. In the evenings, Emily often read aloud to Lucky, something she had picked up from a friend who said it comforted animals. She would select soft, gentle stories, tales of adventure, love, and courage, reading them in a calm voice while Lucky listened, sometimes tilting his head or resting his chin on her knee. These moments were peaceful, almost meditative, and allowed Emily to reflect on the world in a different way. Caring for Lucky had slowed her down, forced her to notice details she had once ignored, and reminded her that life's smallest moments often held the deepest meaning. Days turned into weeks, and Emily's routine with Lucky became inseparable from her own life. She learned his quirks, how he loved to chase falling leaves in the park, how he would bark softly at the sound of the rain against the window, how he would snuggle into her lap when he sensed her sadness. Every small action reinforced the bond they shared, creating a rhythm of care, trust, and emotional intimacy that Emily had never anticipated. Despite this growing attachment, Emily continued her search for Lucky's true owner. She expanded her efforts, contacting local animal shelters, posting to neighborhood forums, and asking neighbors if anyone was missing a dog. Each day, her hope would rise with every inquiry and fall with every dead end. The uncertainty weighed on her, yet it also strengthened her resolve. She could not imagine keeping Lucky without knowing if he belonged to someone else. Her sense of morality and responsibility guided her actions, even as her heart secretly longed to keep him for herself. One evening, after a long day of searching, Emily returned home to find Lucky unusually restless. He paced around the apartment, whining softly and scratching at the door. Concerned, she followed him outside, and there, across the street, she noticed a small group of children playing. They ran up excitedly, calling out, "Hey, that's the dog from the flyer." Emily's heart leapt. Could this be a clue? She approached carefully, listening to the children as they described the dog's home and the family who had lost him. They mentioned details that seemed to match Lucky perfectly, though Emily could not yet be sure. Her pulse quickened as she realized that the search might be coming to a pivotal moment. As Emily continued her careful search, each day brought a mix of hope and disappointment. She scoured social media pages posting updates and images of Lucky, her heart tightening whenever someone commented asking if the dog had been found. Sometimes people would mistake Lucky for their own lost pets, calling and coming over, only to discover the dog was not theirs. These moments were bittersweet, leaving Emily relieved but also feeling the weight of responsibility all over again. She realized that caring for a lost animal was not just a simple act. It was a continuous commitment, one that tested patience, empathy, and persistence. Emily became more attentive to the little details around her. She noticed how Lucky reacted to passing cars, loud noises, and the subtle rhythms of city life. She learned to anticipate his anxieties and comforted him with gentle words and touches. Nights were spent reading about dog behavior and recovery, ensuring she did everything possible to make Lucky feel safe. Every small step forward in his recovery gave her immense satisfaction, but also a subtle ache, knowing the dog's true family could be waiting somewhere, unaware of the kindness that had saved him. One rainy afternoon, as she walked Lucky along a narrow street lined with brownstones, she spotted a flyer partially torn and stuck to a lamppost. The image on it was unmistakably Lucky. Her heart raced, and she carefully read the details, noting a phone number and a short description. This was it, the first real lead she had found. She dialed the number with trembling fingers, trying to steady her voice. On the other end, a woman answered, her tone anxious yet hopeful. "Hello? I think you might have my dog," Emily began, explaining how she had found Lucky and taken him in. The woman listened intently, asking careful questions to confirm the dog's identity. After a tense few moments, the woman's voice broke slightly. "Yes, that's him. Thank you so much. I can't believe someone took care of him." Emily arranged a meeting with the woman, who introduced herself as Sarah. They agreed to meet at a local park the following afternoon. Emily could hardly sleep that night, torn between excitement, anxiety, and a sense of inevitability. Lucky seemed to sense her mood, curling close to her and resting his head on her chest. She stroked his fur softly, whispering, "Tomorrow we'll find your family." The night passed slowly, each tick of the clock stretching her anticipation and anxiety. The next day, Emily arrived at the park early, Lucky trotting beside her. The clouds had cleared slightly, leaving a soft golden light filtering through the trees. She saw a woman waiting, holding a small child's hand. As Emily approached, the woman's eyes lit up, and the child let out an excited cry. Lucky's ears perked up, and his tail wagged furiously. The reunion was immediate and heartwarming. The child knelt down, arms outstretched, and Lucky bounded forward, nuzzling her face. Tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks as she thanked Emily repeatedly, her voice choked with emotion. "You don't know what this means to us," she said, holding Lucky close. "He's more than a pet. He's our daughter's companion, her source of comfort and strength." Emily watched quietly, her own eyes misting over. She had known this moment would come, yet experiencing it was more emotional than she had anticipated. The bond she had formed with Lucky was profound, yet she understood that returning him was the right thing to do. She knelt down, letting Lucky lick her face once more, whispering soft goodbyes. The little girl hugged the dog tightly, and Lucky wagged his tail, glancing back at Emily as if acknowledging the love they had shared. Over the following days, Emily stayed in touch with Sarah, learning how integral Lucky was to her daughter's emotional well-being. He helped the girl cope with anxiety, sleep peacefully, and face social challenges with confidence. Emily realized that her decision to care for a lost dog had not only preserved a life, but had safeguarded the happiness and health of an entire family. The gratitude she received was overwhelming, yet she felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing she had done what was right. In the weeks that followed, Emily found herself reflecting on the impact of small acts of kindness. She began volunteering at a local animal shelter, helping stray and abandoned animals find homes inspired by her experience with Lucky. Her social media posts about his story went viral locally, encouraging thousands to engage in acts of compassion, whether large or small. People shared their own stories, commented with encouragement, and even donated to shelters, creating a ripple effect that Emily had never imagined. Through this journey, Emily learned invaluable lessons about empathy, responsibility, and the profound impact of noticing and responding to those in need. She realized that life's richest treasures were not measured in money or possessions, but in the connections we make, the lives we touch, and the love we give without expectation. Lucky's story became a symbol of hope, kindness, and the transformative power of simple, selfless acts. And as Emily walked through the city streets once more, watching the sun set in a sky painted with soft orange and pink hues, she smiled, knowing that a small act of noticing a lost dog had changed her life and the lives of many others forever. The morning after returning Lucky to the park where he had been found, Emily woke with a restless heart. Although she had done the right thing by allowing Lucky to reunite with his potential owner, she couldn't shake a nagging feeling that the story was far from over. Something in the pit of her stomach told her that Lucky's true home might not yet have been fully revealed, or perhaps that fate still had twists in store. She dressed quickly and stepped out into the crisp morning air, Lucky following closely, his leash taut with excitement and curiosity. Emily's first plan was to revisit the neighborhood, speaking with residents and business owners who might know more about Lucky's background. The narrow streets and winding alleys of the city seemed to hold secrets in every corner. She stopped at a small convenience store, where the clerk remembered seeing a flyer about a lost dog pinned to a bulletin board just a few blocks away. "Lots of people have been looking for him," the clerk said, "but no one's claimed him yet." Emily thanked him and made a note, feeling a glimmer of hope. Perhaps there was more to uncover about Lucky's past than she had initially realized. Her next step was to expand the search online. Emily meticulously scanned neighborhood forums, social media groups, and lost and found pet pages. She posted new photos of Lucky, including close-ups of his face, his distinctive fur patterns, and the little blue collar she had found him wearing. Each post included detailed descriptions, where she had found him, the date, and a plea for information. Hours passed and she checked her phone obsessively for any responses. A few comments trickled in, some from people claiming to know the dog, others asking for more details, but none provided concrete leads. Emily felt the familiar surge of frustration mingled with determination. She could not and would not give up. In the midst of this, a new complication arose. One evening, a woman messaged Emily claiming that Lucky belonged to her. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She arranged a meeting in a neutral location, a small park with plenty of open space, and felt a mixture of hope and anxiety. When the woman arrived, however, it became immediately clear that she had the wrong dog. Lucky, now playful and confident, bounded toward Emily rather than the woman. The potential owner's face fell, and Emily gently explained that the dog was not theirs. Relief washed over her as Lucky's tail wagged happily, oblivious to the tension of the encounter. But the incident underscored a troubling reality. Finding the real owner would not be straightforward. Over the next several days, Emily encountered numerous obstacles. Flyers were torn down or weather damaged. Social media posts were buried under newer content, and messages from confused claimants continued to pour in. Each time, Emily had to navigate carefully, verifying details and gently declining false claims. The emotional toll was significant. She began to experience restless nights wondering if she would ever locate the true owner, and questioning whether her persistent attachment to Lucky was clouding her judgment. She spoke to friends and family, seeking guidance and reassurance, and they encouraged her to remain patient and methodical. Amidst the search, Emily observed small changes in Lucky's behavior. While he remained playful and affectionate with her, there were moments when he would pause, ears perked, and glance toward the streets as if sensing something beyond her comprehension. It was almost as if he too was searching for something or someone. Emily found these moments both touching and bittersweet, a reminder that his journey was not yet complete. She began keeping a detailed journal of his actions, noting the times he seemed particularly attentive to passing strangers or noises. This meticulous record-keeping became both a tool and a comfort, allowing her to feel proactive rather than helpless. One particularly stormy evening, Emily was returning home from the park when she noticed a small group of children gathered around a corner. They pointed and whispered excitedly, clearly recognizing Lucky. Emily approached, curious. The children shared that they had seen a woman in the neighborhood posting flyers for a missing dog matching Lucky's description. Heart racing, Emily took down the details, feeling a surge of anticipation. Could this be the breakthrough she had been waiting for? The children promised to show her the location the next day, a promise Emily held on to with anxious hope. The following morning, Emily arrived early at the corner described by the children. A modest house with a tidy garden stood there, and a woman was pinning up fresh flyers. Emily introduced herself cautiously, explaining that she had found Lucky and had been caring for him while trying to locate his owner. The woman's eyes widened in recognition, and she introduced herself as Sarah. Emily felt a mixture of relief and nervousness as she confirmed the details. The collar, the dog's behavior, and the approximate date of disappearance. All signs pointed to this being the rightful owner. Yet Emily couldn't allow herself to feel completely at ease until every detail was verified. During their conversation, Emily learned that Lucky was not just a family pet, but a therapy dog for Sarah's young daughter, who relied on him heavily for emotional support. The girl, Emily discovered, experienced anxiety and social difficulties that Lucky helped to manage. This revelation deepened Emily's understanding of the stakes. She realized that returning Lucky was not merely about reuniting a lost pet with its owner. It was about restoring a vital source of stability and comfort for a child who depended on him. The weight of this responsibility brought tears to her eyes, and she promised to do everything possible to ensure a smooth and safe reunion. In the days leading up to the planned handover, Emily coordinated carefully with Sarah. She continued caring for Lucky, while also preparing the child for the reunion, sending photos and updates to ease any anxiety. Emily's meticulous attention to detail reflected both her empathy and her growing understanding of the situation's importance. Meanwhile, she faced personal challenges, balancing her job, daily responsibilities, and the emotional strain of preparing to say goodbye to a companion she had grown to love deeply. Throughout this process, Emily also reflected on her own life and the lessons she had learned. She realized that kindness and responsibility were deeply intertwined, and that even small, seemingly insignificant actions could have profound impacts on others. Each day with Lucky reinforced her belief that love and compassion were the most powerful forces in the world, capable of bridging gaps, mending hearts, and creating connections that could change lives. She documented these reflections in her journal, creating a record of growth and understanding that would stay with her long after Lucky's departure. Days turned into a blur of activity as Emily threw herself into the search for Lucky's rightful owner. She treated each lead, each message, and each flyer with meticulous care. Social media became both a blessing and a curse. While some people offered valuable tips, many misled her with mistaken claims, demanding attention and patience she sometimes felt she lacked. One evening, a frantic message came from a woman claiming her neighbor had seen Lucky in a nearby park. Emily rushed there, Lucky trotting at her side, only to discover that the sighting was a false alarm. She felt a heavy sinking feeling in her chest, but Lucky, oblivious to the tension, bounded across the grass, sniffing and chasing after leaves, reminding her that hope and persistence were worth every frustration. The city itself seemed to play a subtle role in their search. Narrow alleys, bustling streets, and hidden corners revealed moments of serendipity that Emily could never have planned. She spoke with dozens of neighbors, dog owners, and passers-by, showing photos and sharing stories. A small group of children became her unexpected allies, guiding her through parts of the neighborhood she had never explored. Their excitement and curiosity were infectious, and Emily began to notice how small acts, like asking a stranger a simple question, could unlock vital information. One particularly tense afternoon, Emily received a call from someone claiming to be Lucky's owner. Her heart raced as she asked careful questions, the color of his collar, distinctive markings, and recent habits. The details didn't fully match, and Emily could sense the uncertainty in the caller's voice. She gently explained that she needed confirmation before handing Lucky over, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. Moments like these tested her patience, but they also reinforced the seriousness of her responsibility. Lucky's well-being and future rested on her careful judgment. Meanwhile, Emily's emotional journey deepened. She found herself reflecting on the bond she had formed with Lucky, the playful moments in the park, quiet evenings reading stories, and shared comfort during storms. These memories tugged at her heart, making the thought of returning him bittersweet. She journaled her thoughts, exploring feelings of attachment, responsibility, and the profound sense of purpose she experienced through caring for him. Every decision carried emotional weight, each choice shaping both her life and the life of the dog she had rescued. One evening, after a long day of searching, Emily noticed Lucky behaving unusually. He paused, ears perked, and stared down a narrow alley, growling softly. Emily followed his gaze and saw nothing at first. Then a small figure emerged from the shadows, a woman carrying a flyer with Lucky's picture. Emily's pulse quickened. Could this be the real owner? She approached cautiously, introducing herself and recounting the story of finding Lucky. The woman, Sarah, nodded in recognition, her eyes filling with tears as she described the importance of the dog to her family. Lucky, sensing familiarity, wagged his tail and nuzzled towards Sarah, cementing the bond Emily had suspected all along. The following days were filled with preparations for the final reunion. Emily coordinated closely with Sarah, ensuring that the meeting would be safe, calm, and emotionally supportive for both Lucky and the young girl who depended on him. She shared updates and photos, helping the child become familiar with Lucky's recent routines. Emily also spent time reflecting on her own life, how this small act of kindness had profoundly altered her perspective. She realized that responsibility, compassion, and patience were not just abstract virtues but practical tools that could create real, tangible impact in the lives of others. Throughout this period, Emily continued to navigate obstacles. Miscommunications, false leads, and unexpected setbacks tested her resolve. Yet each challenge reinforced her commitment, and each small victory, like confirming a sighting or receiving a new tip, brought renewed hope. She grew increasingly aware of the interconnectedness of the world around her, how a single act of noticing a lost dog could ripple through a community, inspiring kindness, cooperation, and awareness in ways she had never anticipated. As the day of the reunion approached, Emily felt a mixture of excitement, anxiety, and melancholy. She knew that parting with Lucky would be difficult, yet she also understood the profound joy and relief that awaited his true family. She prepared him carefully, ensuring that he was calm and comfortable, and rehearsed how she would introduce him to Sarah and the child. Every step was deliberate, every detail considered, reflecting both her love for the dog and her deep understanding of the importance of the moment. The reunion itself was everything Emily had hoped it would be and more. Sarah and her daughter were overwhelmed with gratitude, their emotions raw and heartfelt. Lucky bounded to them, tail wagging, ears perked, and eyes shining with recognition and happiness. The child hugged him tightly, whispering excitedly, and Lucky responded with joyful enthusiasm. Emily watched, her own heart full as the moments of connection unfolded before her. She realized that the weeks of searching, the long days, the emotional strain, and the countless small decisions had culminated in a moment of pure, transformative joy. After the reunion, Emily felt a deep sense of fulfillment and purpose. She had not only returned a lost dog to his rightful home, but had also safeguarded the emotional well-being of a child who relied on him. She understood more fully than ever that small acts of kindness, notice, attention, care, could have profound and lasting impact. Emily's experience with Lucky became a story she shared with others, inspiring friends, neighbors, and online communities to act with compassion and empathy in their own lives. Emily's days became a rhythm of hope, anxiety, and careful observation. Every sound outside her apartment, every passing stranger, and every message notification made her pulse quicken. She started noticing subtle cues from Lucky that she hadn't before. A particular bark at certain times of day, the way he would tilt his head when hearing distant footsteps, and moments when he seemed to hesitate, as if sensing something important. Emily documented each behavior meticulously, convinced that these observations could help guide her to the true owner. One morning, a new lead arrived via social media. A local resident had posted about a family desperately searching for their lost dog, providing a photo that closely matched Lucky's appearance. Emily reached out immediately, exchanging messages and arranging a tentative meeting. She spent hours confirming details, checking collar colors, birthmarks, and behavioral quirks. Each confirmation brought a surge of hope, yet also a cautious reserve. She had been misled before and knew better than to let excitement cloud judgment. During this period, Emily also began to notice the subtle ways in which her own life had changed. She laughed more freely, felt a deeper connection to her neighbors, and experienced a sense of purpose she hadn't known in years. Caring for Lucky had opened a door to empathy, patience, and awareness, forcing her to consider perspectives she had previously overlooked. She began volunteering small amounts of time at local shelters, offering guidance to others seeking lost pets, and sharing her story as an example of how determination and kindness could truly make a difference. The suspense reached a climax one evening when Emily received a frantic phone call from a woman claiming to be Lucky's owner. The caller's voice trembled with desperation, explaining that their child's life depended on the dog's presence. Emily felt her heart pound. She asked careful questions, cross-checking every detail she could remember. The answers matched almost perfectly. Emily realized that the final reunion was imminent. She arranged a meeting the following day at a quiet park, away from crowds to ensure a calm and safe handover. That night, Emily could hardly sleep. She lay awake, Lucky curled beside her, his warmth a comforting presence. She reflected on the journey they had shared, the rainy alley, the long days of bonding, the anxious nights, and the countless small acts of care. She realized that the dog had become more than a companion. He'd been a teacher, showing her the power of attention, patience, and unconditional love. Morning came, and Emily prepared carefully. She checked Lucky's collar, ensured his water and food were ready, and rehearsed her introduction to Sarah and her daughter. When they arrived, the scene was heart-stopping. Lucky's eyes lit up, his tail wagged furiously, and he bounded to them with joy. The child cried tears of happiness, hugging him tightly while Sarah's voice choked with gratitude. Emily watched, her own heart full, knowing that every challenge, every obstacle, and every act of care had led to this perfect moment. The morning sun filtered gently through the trees, casting soft golden light across the quiet park where Emily had arranged the final reunion. She felt a mix of excitement, anxiety, and bittersweet sadness. Lucky trotted beside her, seemingly sensing that today would be momentous. His tail wagged with restrained excitement, ears pricked and eyes occasionally flicking toward Emily as if seeking reassurance. She knelt to stroke his fur one last time before the meeting, whispering, "You're going home, Lucky. You'll be with the people who need you most." Across the small field, Sarah arrived with her daughter, clutching a small backpack and her child's tiny hand. The little girl's eyes widened the moment she spotted Lucky, who immediately recognized them and bolted toward them, barking joyfully. Emily's heart swelled with emotion. The scene was overwhelming. Lucky, once a frightened, shivering dog in a dark alley, now full of confidence and joy, racing into the arms of the people he belonged with. The child knelt, hugging Lucky tightly, burying her face into his soft fur. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered excitedly, "I missed you so much." Lucky licked her face in response, tail wagging like a metronome of pure happiness. Sarah stood nearby, overwhelmed by gratitude, her hands trembling as she clutched Emily's hands. "Thank you. I can't even express what this means," she said, voice breaking. "You've given my daughter her best friend back, her comfort, her joy. I don't know how to thank you." Emily felt tears welling in her own eyes. She had loved Lucky deeply, but she knew that returning him was the right thing to do. Every difficult day, every setback, every anxious moment of searching had led to this exact point. She felt a profound sense of fulfillment, realizing that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go. She knelt beside the child, stroking Lucky one last time, whispering, "Take care of him. He's amazing, and he'll always remember you." As Lucky settled into his family's arms, Emily stepped back to observe. She noticed subtle details, the way the girl held his paw, how Sarah spoke gently to him, and the instant bond that radiated between them. She realized that Lucky was more than a pet. He was a bridge of emotional support, healing, and companionship. Her heart ached with both pride and longing, knowing that she had played a pivotal role in restoring this essential connection. Over the next several hours, Emily and Sarah talked extensively. Sarah shared stories of how Lucky had helped her daughter through moments of anxiety, sleep troubles, and social fears. Each tale underscored the dog's unique impact on the child's life and strengthened Emily's sense of purpose. She realized that her actions had not only saved a lost dog, but had directly improved the life of a child and her family. The responsibility she had carried had been heavy, but its reward was immeasurable. After the reunion, Emily returned home feeling a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. She reflected on the journey, from the rainy alley where she first found Lucky to the joyful reunion in the park. Each challenge, from false leads to anxious nights, had tested her patience and resolve. Yet through it all, she had learned invaluable lessons about empathy, persistence, and the transformative power of small acts of kindness. She began documenting her experiences, hoping to inspire others to notice, care, and act compassionately. News of Lucky's story quickly spread through the local community. Social media posts detailing Emily's dedication went viral, inspiring thousands to engage in acts of kindness. People shared their own stories of lost pets, rescued animals, and compassionate neighbors. Local shelters reported an increase in volunteers and donations, all motivated by the ripple effect of Emily's actions. She watched in awe as one small act, a decision to care for a lost dog, created a cascade of positivity, touching lives far beyond what she could have imagined. Emily also noticed personal growth. She had become more confident, patient, and attentive to the needs of others, both human and animal. She had discovered the profound satisfaction of helping, the joy of connection, and the deep emotional rewards of empathy. Her bond with Lucky, though it had ended in a sense, remained a part of her heart, a reminder of the beauty that comes from selfless action. Meanwhile, Lucky thrived in his reunited family. He continued to provide emotional support, comfort, and companionship to Sarah's daughter. Each day brought new stories of laughter, healing, and joy. The little girl's progress in confidence, social engagement, and happiness was remarkable, and Sarah often reached out to Emily to express gratitude, updating her on Lucky's adventures. These updates reinforced Emily's sense of accomplishment, showing her the tangible impact of her kindness and persistence. Months later, Emily reflected on the journey with a sense of profound fulfillment. She had not only rescued a lost dog, but had helped restore the emotional well-being of a child and her family. She had learned that even small, seemingly inconsequential actions could create ripples of transformation, affecting countless lives in unforeseen ways. She continued volunteering, mentoring others in lost pet searches, and sharing her story widely, knowing that the lessons she had learned were universal. Kindness, patience, and empathy could change the world, one act at a time. The story of Lucky became emblematic of the power of compassion. Schools, community centers, and local organizations invited Emily to speak, sharing her experiences and encouraging others to take notice of those in need. Her narrative was simple yet profound: a lost dog, a compassionate person, and the incredible transformations that followed. Audiences were captivated by the story, inspired to act, and reminded that even small deeds, seeing a need and responding, could alter the course of lives. Emily often thought back to that rainy night when she first discovered Lucky. Shivering and scared in the alley, she marveled at how one decision, simply stopping to help, had led to such a meaningful journey. She realized that life's richest rewards were often hidden in plain sight, accessible through simple acts of attention, care, and courage. Lucky had taught her that love and compassion are transformative forces, capable of bridging gaps, healing wounds, and creating joy where despair once existed. Even now, years later, Emily continued to follow Lucky's story. She received photos, letters, and messages from Sarah's family detailing his growth, adventures, and the continued joy he brought into their lives. Each update brought a smile, a tear, and a reaffirmation of her belief in the power of human kindness. She knew that her decision to act, to care, and to persevere had not only saved a life but had also illuminated the capacity for goodness in the world. In the end, Emily's journey with Lucky became more than a story of a lost dog. It became a testament to resilience, compassion, and the profound effects of empathy. It reminded all who heard it that sometimes the simplest acts, pausing to notice, offering help, extending kindness, could lead to extraordinary outcomes. And as she walked through the city streets, seeing familiar neighbors, smiling children, and the gentle rhythm of life, Emily carried with her the quiet satisfaction of knowing that a single act of love had changed not just a dog's life, but the lives of countless others in ways she would never fully measure.